This is from Popular Mechanics. A catastrophic mutating event will strike the world in 2 years, report says. Thoughts you should know. By Tim Nicome, published January 25th, 2023. That, by the way, is the day of my birthday. Just to let you guys know, getting old. A World Economic Forum report says business leaders believe a catastrophic cyber event is coming. Cybercrime will grow from a $3 trillion industry in 2015 to a $10.5 trillion industry by the magic year 2025. Done plenty of videos showing how this 2025 year is just popping up everywhere. Maybe nothing, maybe something. You decide, I guess. According to Cybersecurity Ventures, the unpredictable nature of cybercrime increases threats. The 2023 World Economic Forum in Davos, Switzerland has filled us with lots of uplifting predictions, like how companies will soon decode our brainwaves. The latest warns of a global catastrophic cyber event in the very near future. Gee, they're just predicting these things. I mean, it's not like they plan these things and carry certain things out to bring about these things, make these things come to pass. No, they're treating it like it's, like, oh, they just predicted, wow, they're psychic, or they just, are a couple steps ahead of us, Well, they're not evil. The most striking finding that we've found, well, I'm sure he's just concerned about that. World Economic Forum Managing Director Jeremy Jurgens said during a presentation highlighting the World Economic Forum Global Security Outlook Report 2023, quote, is that 93% of cyber leaders and 86% of cyber business leaders believe that the geopolitical instability makes a catastrophic cyber event likely in the next 2 years. Wow. This far exceeds anything that we've seen in previous surveys, unquote. Add in the extreme unpredictability of these events. Jurgens cited a cyber attack recently aimed at shutting down Ukrainian military abilities that unexpectedly also closed off parts of electrical production across Europe, and the global challenges are only growing. This is a global threat, Jurgen Stock, Secretary General of Interpol, said during the presentation. Quote, it calls for a global response and enhanced and coordinated action, unquote. Government comes in and acts as the savior, as always. More big government, more New World Order, more blah, blah, blah. He said the increased profits from the multiple bad actors reaped from cybercrime should encourage world leaders to work together to make it a priority as they face new sophisticated tools. Probably, more control over the internet, over the computer, over, just order out of chaos that they always do. They have to have a reason to basically take total and complete control over everything. And in this case, right, just like with the event in September 2001, they couldn't get people to agree to give up some of their privileges, rights. Pretty much were privileges the whole time, probably, but they couldn't get people to give up their rights without, creating an event like that. So in this case, they're gonna probably stage an event like this, or try at least, to gain more control, more power. One country that recently saw a massive cyber attack, Albania, is now working with larger allies and warding off the criminals, serving as a laboratory of sorts for folks to realize what is coming. Edi Rama, Albania's prime minister, spoke during the presentation, saying that the growth of the cybercrime industry from $3 trillion in 2015 to an expected $10.5 trillion in 2025, Rama says during the presentation, means that if cybercrime was a state, it would be the third largest global economy after the U.S. and China. That means the crime coming could truly be catastrophic. Rama cited the global response to COVID-19 and said a cyber attack could be much more substantial. Let's imagine a exponential multitude of viruses that mutate every day exponentially while not threatening our body, but the bodies we live in, our organizations, our countries, our system, then you know it could be just apocalypse. They got to throw that out there, right? Part of their, staged Armageddon. It's about viruses that can not only block our way of living, but can control it and deviate it. So, isn't this interesting that this is straight out of the Rockefeller report, I thought about this and many others that, since that Rockefeller report, and I'll show you what I'm talking about here. This one right here. Scenarios for the future of technology and international development. This circulated during the COVID BS. Oops. Oh, don't want to get my channel taken down for having an opinion contrary to the establishment. But anyways, people were obviously pointing out that in this document here, they talked about a virus scenario, and this virus scenario was exactly word for word what basically happened during the early, when COVID first struck, right? Mandatory masks, forced lockdowns, of course. So people were saying that this is one of their little, books that they predict our future in the guise of, just thinking up a scenario. Kind of like what the article I just read, they're saying we predict, but they're actually really planning it. This is part of their plan and they're orchestrating it. They won't tell you that part, but they like to reveal, their plans and stuff through the guise of these kind of documents and shit. So, so you can read this. I mean, I don't know. I think I made a video early on where I read from this. I should have just used a screen recorder to begin with and just read it as it is, as you see right here, rather than printed it off on paper and then read it while I film myself. It just seems more like I'm not making anything up, right? It's right in front of your face when I'm doing this way. There's the lockstep, a world of tighter top-down government control, a more authoritarian leadership with limited innovation and growing citizen pushback. And so that was the one with the virus stuff. Clever together, a world in which highly coordinated and successful strategies emerge for addressing both urgent and entrenched worldwide issues. Hack attack. An economically unstable and shock-prone world in which governments weaken, criminals thrive, and dangerous innovations emerge. So that's what they were just talking about. Okay, so lockstep. And, this talks all about the pandemic. In 2012, the pandemic that the world had been anticipating for years finally hit. Unlike 2009's H1... Dang, I'm having trouble. I need new glasses. H1N1, this new influenza strain originating from wild geese, was extremely virulent and deadly. Even the most pandemic-prepared nations were quickly overwhelmed when the virus streaked around the world, infecting nearly 20% of the global population, killing 8 million in just 7 months. Now, mind you, this is a scenario that's a fictional scenario that they're saying, but just notice that as I read, a little. I'm not going to read the whole thing, but just enough to where, given the general idea, the pandemic also had a deadly effect on economics. International mobility of both people and goods screeched to a halt, debilitating industries like tourism and breaking global supply chains. Even locally, normally bustling shops and office buildings sat empty for months, devoid of both employees and customers. The pandemic blanketed the planet, though disproportionate numbers died in Africa, Southeast Asia, Central America, where the virus spread like wildfire in the absence of official containment protocols. But even in developed countries, containment was a challenge. The United States' initial policy of strongly discouraging citizens from flying proved deadly in its leniency, accelerating the spread of the virus, not just within the U.S., but across borders. However, a few countries did fare better. China in particular, the Chinese government's quick imposition and enforcement of mandatory quarantine for all citizens, exactly what they did right during the COVID, as well as its instant and near hermetic sealing off of all borders, saved millions of lives, stopped the spread of the virus far earlier than in other countries, enabling a swifter post-pandemic recovery. And just propaganda bullshit, or whatever. China's government was not the only one that took extreme measures to protect its citizens from risk and exposure. During the pandemic, national leaders around the world flexed their authority and imposed airtight rules and restrictions, from the mandatory wearing of face masks. Oh, yeah. And, and that's exactly what happened. To body temperature checks at the entries to communal spaces like train stations and supermarkets. Even after the pandemic faded, this more authoritarian control and oversight of citizens and their activities stuck and even intensified. In order to protect themselves from the spread of increasingly global problems, from pandemics and transnational terrorism to environmental crisis and rising poverty to, people actually rising up against them. That's the one thing they left out. Leaders around the world took a firmer grip on power. Blah, you can read this entire thing, but I just wanted to give you the general idea, which I'm sure a lot of you know. So then we have you can read this, but clever together. So, I'm not interested in that. I don't feel like reading this whole damn thing. Hack attack. An economically unstable and shock-prone world in which governments weaken, criminals thrive, and dangerous innovations emerge. Devastating shocks like September 11th. Of course, you got to throw that out. The Southeast Asian tsunami of 2004 and the 2010 Haiti earthquake had certainly primed the world for sudden disasters, but no one was prepared for a world in which large-scale catastrophes would occur with such breathtaking frequency. The years 2010 to 2020 were dubbed the Doom Decade for good reason. The 2012 Olympic bombing, which killed 13,000, was followed closely by an earthquake in Indonesia, killing 40,000, a tsunami that almost wiped out Nicaragua, and the onset of the West China famine caused a once-in-a-millennium drought linked to climate change. Not surprisingly, this opening series of deadly asynchronous catastrophes, there were more, put enormous pressure on an already overstressed global economy that had entered the decade still in recession. Massive humanitarian relief efforts cost vast sums of money, but the primary sources from aid agencies to developed world governments had run out of funds to offer. Most nation states could no longer afford their locked-in costs, let alone respond to increased citizen demand for more security, more healthcare coverage, more social programs and services, and more infrastructure repair. In 2014, when mudslides in Lima buried thousands, only minimal help trickled in, prompting the Economist headline, "Is the planet finally bankrupt?" These dire circumstances forced tough trade-offs. In 2015, the U.S. relocated a large share of its defense spending to domestic concerns, pulling out of Afghanistan, where the resurgent Taliban seized power once again. In Europe, Asia, South America, and Africa, more and more nation-states lost control of their public finances, along with the capacity to help the citizens and retain stability and order. Resource scarcities and trade disputes, together with severe economic and climate stresses, pushed many alliances and partnerships to the breaking point. They also sparked proxy wars and low-level conflict in resource-rich parts of the developing world. Nations raised trade barriers in order to protect their domestic sectors against imports, and in the face of global food and resource shortages, to reduce exports of agricultural produce and other commodities. By 2016, the global coordination and interconnectedness that had marked the post-Berlin Wall world was tenuous at best. With government power weakened, order rapidly disintegrating, and safety nets evaporating, violence and crime grew more rapid. Countries with ethnic, religious, or class divisions saw especially sharp spikes in hostility. Naxalite separatists dramatically expanded their guerrilla campaign in East India. Israeli-Palestinian bloodshed escalated, and across Africa, fights over resources erupted along ethnic or tribal lines. Meanwhile, overtaxed militaries and police forces could do little to stop growing communities of criminals and terrorists from gaining power, and technology-enabled gangs and networked criminal enterprises exploited both the weakness of states and the desperation of individuals. With increasing ease, these global guerrillas moved illicit products through underground channels from poor producer countries to markets in the developed world. Using retired 727s and other rogue aircraft, they crisscrossed the Atlantic from South America to Africa, transporting cocaine, weapons, and operatives. Drug and gun money became a common recruiting tool for the desperately poor. Criminal networks also grew skilled at counterfeiting illicit goods through reverse engineering. Many of these rip-offs and copycats were of poor quality or downright dangerous. In the context of weak health systems, corruption, and inattention to standards, either within countries or from global bodies like the World Health Organization, tainted vaccines entered the public health system of several African countries. In 2021, 600 children in Côte d'Ivoire, I'm sure I pronounced that wrong, died from a bogus hepatitis B vaccine, which paled in comparison to the scandal sparked by mass deaths from a tainted anti-malarial drug years later. The deaths and resulting scandals sharply affected public confidence in vaccine delivery. Parents, not just in Africa but elsewhere, began to avoid vaccinating their children, and it wasn't long before infant and child mortality rates rose to levels not seen since the 70s, and that's just a bunch of propaganda bullshit right there, right? So I think that this is possibly, like their other stuff, they throw in a lot of things like that tainted vaccines to Africans. That's, I don't know, makes me think of Gates and, those guys, and they might just be throwing that out there. But then, they're sort of selling it like it's, just, it was just once bad vaccine that, all the vaccines are good, we just, whatever. Technology hackers were also hard at work. Internet scams, pyramid schemes plagued inboxes. More sophisticated hackers attempted to take down corporations, government systems, and banks via phishing scams and database information heists. Many successes generated billions of dollars in losses. Desperate to protect themselves and their intellectual property, the few multinationals still thriving enacted strong, increasingly complex defensive measures. Patent applications skyrocketed and patent thickets proliferated as companies fought to claim and control even the tiniest innovations. Security measures and screenings tightened. This Wild West environment had a profound impact on innovation. The threat of being hacked in the presence of so many thefts and fakes lowered the incentives to create me first rather than me too technologies. So many patent thickets made the cross-pollination of ideas and research difficult at best. Blockbuster pharmaceuticals quickly became artifacts of the past, replaced by increasing production of generics. Breakthrough innovations still happened in various industries, but they were focused more on technologies that could not be easily replicated or re-engineered. And once created, they were vigorously guarded by their inventors or even by their nations. In 2022, a biofuel breakthrough in Brazil was protected as a national treasure or used as a marketing chip in trade with other countries. Verifying the authenticity of anything was increasingly difficult. The heroic efforts of several companies and NGOs to create recognized seals of safety and approval proved ineffective when even those scales were hacked. The positive effects of the mobile and internet revolutions were tempered by their increasing fragility as scamming and viruses proliferated, preventing these networks from achieving the reliability required to become the backbone of developing economies or a source of trustworthy information for anybody. Interestingly, not all of the hacking was bad. Genetically modified crops and do-it-yourself biotech became backyard and garage activities, producing important advances. In 2017, and remember this is all fictionalized scenario, this is all the way back in 2010 when this came out. So they were just, and so you're going to find half-truths of their agenda mixed in with because they got to make it believable that this was just a scenario by men who don't have an evil plan or not planning anything like this. So they got to make they got to throw in some inaccurate things with things that obviously come to pass, mixed in with bullshit and lies. So, but anyways, African scientists who had returned to their home countries after working in Western multinationals unveiled the first of a range of new GMOs that boosted agricultural productivity on the continent. But despite such efforts, the global have-not gap grew wider than ever. The very rich still had the financial means to protect themselves, and gated communities sprung up from New York to Lagos, providing safe havens surrounded by slums. In 2025, there we go. There's that year again. I guess I can't really highlight that, can I? Nope, but you can read it. In 2025, keep that in mind. Again, if that year keeps popping up everywhere. It was de rigueur to build not a house, but a high-walled fortress guarded by armed personnel. The wealthy also capitalized on the loose regulatory environment to experiment with advanced medical treatments and other under-the-radar activities. Those who couldn't buy their way out of chaos, which was most people, retreated to whatever safety they could find. With opportunity frozen and global mobility at a near standstill, no place wanted more people, especially more poor people. It was often a retreat to the familiar family ties, religious beliefs, or even national allegiance. Trust was afforded to those who guaranteed safety and survival, whether it was a warlord, an evangelical preacher, or a mother. In some places, the collapse of state capacity led to a resurgence of feudalism. In other areas, people managed to create more resilient communities, operating as isolated micro-versions of formerly large-scale systems. The weakening of national governments also enabled grassroots movements to form and grow, creating new rays of hope amid the bleakness. By 2030, the distinctions between developed and developing nations no longer seem particularly descriptive or relevant. And so water wars predicted here. Millennium Development Goals, that's the Agenda 21 there. Warlords dispose vital medicines to Southeast Asian communities. So, and, if this place ever collapses, if they ever do get their sort of Armageddon scenario sort of carried out, I think a lot of these supposed, possibly, not everybody, I won't name names because I don't want to name names that I can't really, prove. I could be wrong, but I think that some of these guys who, are supposed patriots and stuff, when it collapses and stuff, many of them might turn into these warlords too. Here in America, I could see, a lot of these militias, which I can guarantee you, many of them at the top are controlled by these various occult secret societies. Will basically turn into thug warlords. Not your friends. Why? Because, it's all about bringing about that scenario of that order out of chaos. They got to get the people to accept, their staged or their fake new heavens, new earth, new world order. They also refer to their New World Order using the biblical terminology, New Jerusalem, the kingdom of God. But yeah, you can read this, but if you want, just wanted to let you know, they might play this out. This might be another, they tend to do that too sometimes, where they throw little stuff out there. They'll, like with the 9/11 thing, and then there's other things they'll sometimes put in films and art, like what they did with the 9/11 thing as predictive programming, and some of it doesn't come to pass, some of it doesn't come true, but a lot of it does. So it's just something to look out for. That's what I assumed when I first read this. When the COVID thing came out, I looked at the hack attack chapter and I went, oh, I guess we could all see this kind of coming in, I suppose. So we know that there's that year 2025 again that I'm finding here. It's just as a magic number that keeps popping up. I don't know what's what. What's funny? This is hilarious, right? You got that guy, Don Petit from NASA, saying that they destroyed all the technology to get to the moon, and it's a painful process to build it back up. Even though down here we've advanced technology for the past 50 odd years. Has it been 50 years? Yeah, 50 plus years. We've advanced in so much technology, it's incredible, yet NASA still, hasn't advanced, has done the reverse opposite, hasn't advanced, according to Don Petit. But then they're saying we're going to walk on the moon again in 2025. Isn't that something? But then, oh wait. We're going to go to Mars. Where was that? So, the disinformation, it's everywhere. Or, the lies and these secret society people. How do you go to going to the moon and, you have Don Petit saying that we don't have the technology. Now they're saying that we're going to be building the technology again. While they're saying that, a couple years prior, they were saying we're getting ready to go to Mars. Which is like, how many miles away? You got to be fucking kidding me. Yeah. So, yeah. I just wanted to point that out because that year's in there, 2025. So, yeah, I've got, just wanted to throw in some just random articles too that I meant to, fill you guys in with, that I just don't have the time. I have so much going on, stress-wise and personal stuff, that I can only do so much and whatever. But airlines are finally admitting contrails are an environmental problem, and of course they're doing the damage control. Airlines and scientists are coming to a consensus that the water vapor trails created by airplanes at high altitudes may play a big role in global warming. That's because those contrails, short for condensation trails, create clouds that trap heat in the atmosphere at the critical altitude where airliners fly. In fact, contrail clouds may be a more significant factor in global warming than carbon dioxide or other fuel emissions, according to a European Union study measuring more than a decade of airline flights. It's part of an emerging field of study in climate science called effective radiating forcing, which measures the total warming effect instead of the older standard of totaling CO2 emissions. Now airlines, including Fort Worth-based American and Dallas-based Southwest, are trying to figure out which of these contrails are most harmful to the environment and what, if anything, can be done about it while flying commercial jets full of passengers. Air travel has almost a double-sized impact on global warming than what we thought it was before, said Andrew Chen, an aviation specialist with clean energy nonprofit, the Rocky Mountain Institute. The most interesting dynamic is that the airlines are not shying away from contrails. you know, what gets me, and I know they're not obviously not telling the truth. You know, they're what they're doing is, again, the disinformation. They know they can't hide what they're doing on cloudy days where we're seeing tic-tac-toe lines. I've showed them on my channel. I tried to show one where I saw a jet literally turn its propeller off, whatever, and then turn it back on. But actually twice. The first time I was in my Jeep when it was working, and I just didn't have my phone out. I was at an angle, I just couldn't get to it, and I was like, "Damn it! I wish I would have got that," because it was a pretty good day, and I might have been able to capture it then. But the other day, it was the second time. It was sort of hard to see already without the without my let alone with the phone camera, it wouldn't have showed up. I did take it and it didn't show up. So yeah, so you can't tell me that this is just normal natural condensation stuff. I mean, but what they're doing here, right, is that they can't hide that fact. So now they're if they hadn't have said something like this sooner or later, but I think many people are going to start to wonder too. So. And that it is influencing our weather. But what they're doing is that they're literally engineering our weather with their geoengineering projects. For whatever reason, we can argue, seems like a 50-50. Seems like some of these operations seem to try to increase the precipitation, and other operations, whatever, seem to take away precipitation. Or last year we had that tornado outbreak, whatever. I think it was in December of 2021, and we had that, not that tri-state, the one right after here in Humboldt, we had those tornadoes. And right prior to that, I was showing all the footage of every day they were filling our skies with the trails. And these aren't commercial-looking jets. I'm sorry, a lot of them aren't. They're look like some kind of military jet airplanes. But now they're, what I find interesting. Even contrails during the day are bad, though clouds may be acting to block some sunlight from reaching the surface. But where did the worst contrails happen? At night, when the Earth is naturally cooling without sunlight, but man-made clouds at that critical altitude can block heat from escaping. So whether or not a plane makes contrails depends on a variety of factors, including temperature, altitude, and humidity, which is bogus because on weather cold and hot, I've seen our sky littered with trails. But yeah, I read this, so they can't hide it anymore, so they're biding their time. I guess they're biding their time until they hit us big. With their Armageddon. Is there anything else really? I mean, I got a lot of I was going to do a video on this A&E together. This is an interesting organization here, but that's for another day. But yeah, I had a lot of ideas for videos. Like I noticed that I'm seeing this Greek A&E together. I looked it up, and it doesn't have to be anything nefarious if you see that, but I'm noticing and I didn't really want to make the video public so much, but if you go to the soul.org, they got the A&E they got a priesthood within that body called the 80th priesthood. So I just thought it was interesting. I'm seeing this crop up a little bit more and more on, websites like this or others, and I kind of wanted to make a video on that, but that's for another day. Yeah, there's a whole bunch of stuff that I could do. But anyways, I won't. That should do it for today. I would, the best thing we can do right now, I guess, is just not get too doomy. They often try to put us in that state of mind too, but just, I guess, do the best you can to prepare, and just in case shit hits the fan, and yeah, we might have some serious times coming our way. So, yeah, think about your family and the other loved ones, and brace for anything. Take care.